A jockey was riding the favorite at a race meeting and was well ahead of the field. His horse rounded the final corner when suddenly the jockey was hit on the head by a turkey and a string of sausages. He managed to keep control of his mount and pulled back into the lead, only to be struck by a box of Christmas crackers and a dozen mince pies as he went over the last fence. With great skill, he managed to steer the horse to the front of the field once more when, on the run-in, he was struck on the head by a bottle of sherry and a Christmas pudding. Thus distracted, he succeeded in coming only second. He immediately went to the race stewards to complain that he had been seriously hampered. A Russian patrol was going through the woods of Finland when they were wiped out one by a sniper hidden in the deep firs who killed the lot but for one man. "One Finn is better than 10 Russians," he was taunted as he ran away. He returned to his base, and the platoon commander sent out the platoon to find the Finnish sniper, and once again they got picked off, except for one very scared private. "One Finn is better than 50 Russians," the man said he heard as he retreated. Angry, the company commander sent his entire company to dig out this pesky sniper, and you guessed it, they were all killed except for one guy. "One Finn is better than 200 Russians." He heard from the woods as he was trying to get away. He returned to the division HQ, where they were preparing the entire division to go into the woods. Over 2,000 men and their tanks and artillery were all lined up ready for the order. He dragged himself into the commander's tent and pulled himself up to a salute. "Sir, it's a trap. There are 2 of them." A man is in court. The judge says, "On the 3rd of August, you are accused of killing your wife by beating her to death with a hammer. How do you plead?" "Guilty," said the man in the dock. At this point, a man at the back of the court stood up and shouted, "You dirty rat!" The judge asked the man to sit down and to refrain from making any noise. The judge continued, "And that also, on the 17th of September, you are accused of killing your son by beating him to death with a hammer. How do you plead?" "Guilty," said the man in the dock. Again, the same man at the back stood up and shouted even louder, "You dirty, rotten, stinking rat!" At this point, the judge called the man to the bench and said, "I have already asked you to be quiet. If you continue with these outbursts, I will have to charge you with contempt of court. I can understand your feelings, but what relationship do you have to this man?" He replied, "He is my next-door neighbor." The judge replied, "I can understand your feelings then, but you must refrain from any comments." The man replied, "No, Your Honor, you don't understand. Twice I have asked if I could borrow a hammer, and both times he said he didn't have one." Nicholas went to a pharmacy and said, "Hello, can you give me a condom? I'm going to my girlfriend's place for dinner, and I think I will spending the night at her house." The pharmacist gave him the condom, and as Nicholas was going out, he returned and said, "Give me another condom because my girlfriend's sister is very cute too. She always crosses her legs in a provocative manner when she sees me, and I think I might strike luck there too." The pharmacist gave him a second condom, and as Nicholas was leaving again, he turns back and said, "Give me one more condom because my girlfriend's mom is still pretty cute, and when she sees me, she always makes eye contact, and since she invited me for dinner, I think she is expecting me to make a move." During dinner that day, Nicholas sat with his girlfriend on the left, the sister on his right, and her girlfriend's mom facing him. When the dad walks in, Nicholas lowers his head and starts the dinner prayer. "Dear Lord, bless this dinner and thank you for all you've given us." 10 minutes after, Nicholas was still praying. "Thank you, Lord, for your kindness." Another 10 minutes goes by, and Nicholas was still praying, keeping his head down very close to the table. They all looked at each other surprised, and his girlfriend was even more surprised than others. She gets close to him and whispers, "I didn't know you were so religious." Nicholas, with his head still on the table, replies, "I never knew your dad was the pharmacist." I was in the garden with my wife when she winked at me and said, "Do you want me to, go down?" "Sure," I replied. "Just let me get my shovel." The photographer for a national magazine was assigned to get photos of a great forest fire. Smoke at the scene was too thick to get any good shots, so he frantically called his home office to hire a plane. "It will be waiting for you at the airport," he was assured by his editor. As soon as he got to the small rural airport, sure enough, a plane was warming up near the runway. He jumped in with his equipment and yelled, "Let's go! Let's go!" The pilot swung the plane into the wind, and soon they were in the air. "Fly over the north side of the fire," said the photographer, "and make 3 or 4 low-level passes." "Why?" asked the pilot. "Because I'm going to take pictures. I'm a photographer, and photographers take pictures," said the photographer with great exasperation. After a long pause, the pilot said, "You mean you're not the instructor?" There was a blonde sitting next to a man on an airplane. About an hour into the flight, the pilot comes on and says over the intercom, "One of our 4 engines is out. We will be about 15 minutes late arriving." About 30 minutes later, the pilot comes on the intercom again and says, "There's a 2nd engine out. We will be about 30 minutes late." 15 minutes after that, the pilot comes on again and says, "I'm sorry to say that we've lost our 3rd engine, and it looks like we'll be about an hour late arriving at our destination." The blonde turns to the man next to her and says, "Man, if that last engine goes out, we'll be up here all day." In a quiet little village, Francesca was known for 2 things: her devotion to her late husband Enzo and her, well, impressive figure. Every day, without fail, she would visit the cemetery to tend to Enzo's grave. She would bring fresh flowers, water them carefully, and spend a few quiet moments reminiscing about their years together. But what puzzled the other villagers was how Francesca always left the cemetery the same way, walking backwards. One afternoon, as she carefully shuffled away from the grave, her friend Bianca, who had been watching curiously, finally decided to ask. "Francesca," she said, hurrying to catch up, "why on earth do you always leave the cemetery walking backwards?" Francesca stopped, turned her head, and with a knowing smile replied, Bianca, when Enzo was alive, he always used to say, 'You've got such a great ass. It could bring a dead man back to life.'" She sighed dramatically and continued, "So I'm not taking any chances." One evening, over a quiet drink at their favorite pub, James and his friend Mark found themselves deep in conversation about life and relationships. "James," Mark said, swirling his glass thoughtfully, "you're a great guy, successful, kind, decent-looking. Why have you never married?" James sighed and gave a small, wistful smile. "Well, I suppose I've just never met the right woman. I guess I've always been searching for the perfect girl." Mark chuckled. "Oh, come on. Surely in all these years you must have met at least one woman you thought was perfect." A shadow of nostalgia crossed James's face. "Actually, yes, there was one. She was incredible. Kind, intelligent, beautiful, everything I ever wanted. She truly was perfect." Mark leaned in, intrigued. "Then why didn't you marry her?" James took a sip of his drink, set the glass down, and sighed. "Because unfortunately, she was looking for the perfect man." 2 guys pulled into a hardware store in an old pickup truck. One of them walked in and said, "Hey, we need some wood, 4x2s. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "Don't you mean 2x4s? The guy scratched his head. Let me check with my buddy." He ran back out to the truck, had a quick chat, then came back in. "Yeah, you're right, 2x4s. The clerk nodded. "All right, how long do you need them?" The guy paused, confused. "Hang on!" He hustled back to the truck again. A minute later, he returned, looking confident. "We're gonna need them for a real long time. We're building a whole house." A man sat on the edge of the bed, watching his wife admire herself in the mirror. Her birthday was just around the corner, so he asked gently, "What would you like this year, honey?" Without missing a beat, she said, "I wish I was 8 again." The next morning, he sprang into action. He made her a giant bowl of chocolate cereal just like kids eat. Then he whisked her off to the wildest amusement park in town. Every ride, she rode it, twice. The Loop of Doom, the Gut Twister, the Mega Scream, all of them. After 5 hours of whiplash and motion sickness, he treated her to McDonald's, a Happy Meal, a chocolate shake, the works. Still not done, he surprised her with movie tickets to the loudest superhero blockbuster in theaters. Popcorn, soda, M&Ms, everything a sugar-crazed 8-year-old could want. By the end of the day, she could barely walk. She flopped onto the bed like a jellyfish in heels. With a proud smile, he leaned in and said, "So, did you enjoy being 8 again?" She opened one eye, groaned, and muttered, "I meant my dress size, you goofball." A local bar was so sure that its barman was the strongest man in the village that they offered a standing 1,000 pounds bet. The barman would squeeze a lemon until all the juice ran out and challenge any man to squeeze out another drop. Weightlifters and arm wrestlers, they all tried and lost the bet. Then one day, a scrawny wee man, if he stood sideways you would not see him, wearing scratched glasses and a 10-year-old polyester suit walked in and said, "I'd like to take on the bet." After the laughter had died down, the barman said, "Okay," grabbed the lemon and squeezed away. Then he handed the wrinkled remains of the lemon rind to the little man. But the crowd's laughter turned to total silence as the wee man clenched his little fist around the lemon and squeezed it, and a drop fell into the glass. Then he squeezed some more, and another drop fell from the lemon. Without a word, the wee man squeezed some more, and a third drop fell into the glass. The crowd in the bar were astonished and speechless as the barman paid the 1,000 pounds bet. He asked, "What do you do for a living? Are you a lumberjack, a metal worker, a weightlifter, or what?" The little man quietly replied, "I'm a tax collector." Sally, a blonde, goes on her first camping trip. Her husband, who was a scout leader, was sick, so she volunteered to take over for him for the weekend. She got everyone together and assigned different duties to each scout. Gabby was responsible for the food supplies. Mike would be the cook this trip. Johnny was responsible for their maps and making up a time schedule. Tim was to decide on their events and fit them into Johnny's schedule, and Sally would test all their equipment before setting out. They arrived at Big Moose Mountain and everyone was excited. They arrived right on schedule and were getting ready for their first event, hiking up the mountain. But first, they wanted to get something to eat. So Sally asked Mike if he would prepare the meal, and of course Mike said he would. About 10 minutes later, he came back and told Sally, "I can't make the supper. I can't light a fire with the matches you brought." Sally replied, "I can't understand that. Those matches should be perfectly fine. I tested them all just before we left." A young girl come home from school and asks her mother, "Is it true what Rita just told me?" "What's that?" asks her mother. "That babies come out of the same place where boys put their things," said her daughter. "Yes, it is, dear," replies her mother, pleased that the subject had finally come up and that she wouldn't have to explain it to her daughter. "But then when I have a baby," responded the girl, "won't it knock my teeth out?"